Okay, so we got the icom 751a. We already kind of discussed some of its shortcomings and whatnot. And if you were able to find the 761, it would have a built-in power supply and a tuner and all that, but it'd basically be a 751. So this is kind of like the poor man's 761 here. You had the older logo IC-AT500 HF full automatic antenna tuner, and this actually matches one of their amplifiers. I think it's the 2KL. Whatever one doesn't have a tuner in it. These funny little things on the front. This is a really interesting tuner. So you would have the radio, the amplifier, and the tuner. I don't know how big the amplifier was. I would guess at least as big as the radio. And it's basically 500 watt amplifier. And I mean, that's a relatively competitive station. Like, you know, we've talked about it on the radio before, especially Clark likes to talk about this, but if they would just make a 500 watt radio with an LD MOS set of finals, that would be it. Nobody would need anything else. It would sell like hotcakes. 500 watts is plenty, because, you know, when I got into ham radio, everybody would get an 811H or an 811. And the problem was that it was such a touchy amplifier that they were constantly going through the tubes, and then it would invariably happen exactly the same way. Somebody would buy one that was newer, and they would go through tubes, and then next thing you know, they would get tired of replacing the tubes, and they would sell the 811, and it would be like anywhere from $300 to $800. And you know, I just never saw one for a good price that didn't seem like it had something wrong with it, so I never bought one. My first amplifier was a Dentron GLA 1000B, which was seemingly worse with 6LQ6 sweep tubes, but actually in reality I think it was a little bit more reliable and much more compact. But at any rate, the Dentron was a good amp. So anyway, where was I going with this? Yeah, so to have this radio and a 500 watt solid state amplifier and a tuner, it's pretty foolproof, you know. And if they just made a radio that did 500 watts, the average person would be okay with that. They wouldn't have to go out and buy a crappy 500 watt ALS 811H or whatever they call them things. Anyway, those aren't really available anymore anyway, because MSJ's pretty much shut down, and the prices have gotten kind of high on those things to where I don't really feel like, you know, the price is warranted. Now, I will say this: if you have an 811 or 811H and you know how to tune it up, it lasts forever. But the problem is that, I don't know, these guys, they just don't understand how to use them or something. They just they think they can turn the they do this weird thing. It's like, I don't understand. It seems like it only happens with people with these small amplifiers. They'll tune the thing up for maximum power, okay, but then they'll reduce their drive. They're like, oh yeah, I got a 500 watt amp, but I'm only running, you know, 300. So they turn down the radio that's driving the amplifier. Now the radio isn't pushing the amp as hard, and it's out of efficiency. And these tubes, the 811 tubes, do not have enough dissipation, and they cannot handle being out of resonance, and so then they just burn up. So you tuned it. It's basically the way it works is with those. They need to be run them at their full potential. That's where they're efficient. Okay. They don't like to be tuned up and then drive reduced. If you're going to drop down the input into the amp, you need to retune the amp. You can't tune the amp with 100 watts drive and then go give it 20 watts drive. It's not going to work with those. It's not a 3-500 where you can get away with abusing it. Anyway, so my point was, this was an interesting setup. You could have this radio, you could have the amp, you could have the tuner, you were good to go. You know, and then unlike the, well, 761 or 765, the tuner was built into it and it couldn't handle 500 watts. This actually is almost a better idea because you have the radio, but it doesn't have the tuner in it, so it's not quite as big. And then you can put the radio, the amp, and this tuner on the desk, and you got a complete station. The only thing you don't have is 2 meters, 440, and 6 meters. So, yeah, if you had a 761 or 765, you'd still need the tuner to run the amp. But anyway, it's got a cable on it. It can do auto switching and follow you wherever you go, or you can do it manual with a non-icom radio, so it's actually pretty cool. So we'll check that out a little bit later today.